the chairman of Betelco at the time and the CEO called me in and they asked me to put their money where my mouth was and asked me to come in and start working with them. And I remember at the time they gave me one slide, and the slide said Betelco today, which is just make sure that we remain the market leader. Betelco tomorrow, fix the core, right? That was the challenge. And Betelco in 3 years, become unrecognizable. That was the slide.
Which year was that?
So it was 3 years ago. They gave me that one slide and they said, good luck, Mohammed. Shook my hand and they said, you have to worry about item number 3, become unrecognizable.
Can you tell us what AWS, do you know what AWS is?
I've heard of it.
You heard of it?
Yeah, it sounds very
It's Amazon.
Yeah.
Amazon Web Services. So most of 1/3 of the global internet operates off of Amazon Web Services, and 3 of their global data centers are in Bahrain. Yeah, so it's a massive piece of infrastructure that powers everything from Fortnite all the way to Twitch, all the way through basic websites, and that all operates out of, 3 of their biggest data centers operate out of here. So it's something we're very proud of. But yeah, we effectively did that. They asked me to help meet them on the challenge and make Betelco unrecognizable. And one thing led to another. 3 years in, we built what we did, and now you know us as BEYON. And BEYON is the group of technology businesses that includes Betelco, but is a series of companies in the technology space doing a number of really interesting things. Does that answer your question, or do you?
It does, in various fields,
Yeah.
right? Because, like, as you know, and this is one of the things that we also try to keep, like, students' skills, that technology is not just about programming. Technology is part of every other field that we go, that you can have in the future, as Sheikh Mohammed said, from services to manufacturing, artificial intelligence.
Yeah, so I mean, as a technology group, what does BEYON do? BEYON today started with, we have our telco, the telco business that we do. So we have Betelco, and we have Omnia, which is a Jordanian business that is also like Betelco in Jordan. And then we have another one in the Maldives, and we have another one in the Channel Islands, and we have another one in Saudi Arabia, right? So that's the telco business, which of course provides the connectivity that gives you guys the internet. But then we do other interesting things like cybersecurity and teach businesses how to digitize. That's another component of what we do. We do logins, and how do you get people to log in, and digital identity. We do a number of interesting things around each of these areas, and of course we do financial services. So BEYON Money, that's a card that you guys might have seen around. That's a product that we created that provides it democratizes financial services. So more people that otherwise didn't have access to financial services and banks can have access to that. So we help people get into areas like that. But to your point on, the fact that technology is unavoidable. It is, and you guys have probably seen it with ChatGPT more recently, right? And you've probably all used it, and you're probably trying to hide the fact that you might be doing some of your homework on it. But ChatGPT is such a smart system in terms of how it's operating, but AI is something that is normal. It's actually a part of our lives on a daily basis, right? When you scan your face on your phone, that's AI that's doing that. When you get autocorrections on grammar in your Word document, that's AI that's supporting that. So when we talk about the ubiquity of technology, and just to play on AI, and why it's going to be so important to the future of jobs, for instance, lawyers are not going to disappear. People that are journalists are not going to disappear. Those jobs will stay there. But the important thing is there will be a difference in the future about which jobs are more relevant and which jobs are less relevant. And probably, I think, there will only be, the successful people will be people that augment the job they do with AI. So it's not that they're getting replaced by AI, but so it's not like an AI will replace a lawyer, but lawyers who will be successful in the future will be lawyers who use AI and make it a part of their job, right? Just in the same ways that you guys are going to probably be doing it in school. So I think it's something that even if you're not a programmer, even if it's not something that you're kind of building as an application, whatever job you pick or choose, whether it's industrial, and then you have to worry about industrial IoT. How do my machines talk to each other? How do I get the sensors and the feedback and everything from them? Or if it's financial services, in terms of how do I put everything on, the financial services of the future is not your bank necessarily, it's your phone, right? So how do I move my services from the bank to your phone?
Secure them.
And secure them and keep them secure, exactly. So all of that means that whatever aspect of your life you're in, whether it's genetic engineering, legal, industrial, construction, it's all going to have technology as being a part of the impact. And I think to be successful moving forward, you have to recognize where those synergies are, where those intersections are between technology and the actual job, to see how you can help put it together or how you can be a part of putting it together. Yeah.
Can you tell them more about digitalization? I know you mentioned that we try and move the services to digitize, or businesses to digitize their services. Can you give them a small example that maybe can help them understand?
Yeah, as a simple example is, I mean, well, you guys wouldn't have experienced it, I don't think, but the amount of times I remember growing up, and I'd want to buy a phone line or internet, upgrade my internet in the house, right? And then they'd say, oh, you have to go call someone, or you have to go to the store, and you have to do this, and they have to see you and everything else. Nowadays, if you can't do that on your phone, people are just going to stop using your service. So that is basic digitization. And there are people, their entire teams in companies like Betelco, like BEYON, like others, that worry about how do I take a service that for the last 40 years of its life was sold in person or delivered in person, and move it to a service that with one click a person can put it on their phone. And that sounds simple in principle, but it's actually a set of processes and a lot of people that go and get involved to say, rather than doing it this way, how do I do it this way? And it's a critical part of any organization. So we have a head of strategy in the organization that does it. We have our CTO that's involved. We have tons of other teams that are involved, and they're called cross-functional teams. What does a cross-functional team mean? It means it's a team that is composed of people with different skills that come around a problem to solve it. So to solve maybe something like putting your phone bill on your phone might require a person with finance background, plus a person from the IT team, plus a person from the processes team, plus a person from the business planning team, plus a person from the consumer team, all to kind of come in and sit down and say, how do we take this complex spaghetti and simplify it so that it just appears on your phone? And I think every business is going through that change. Some are doing it. You're going through the change, absolutely. You're now digitizing, courses. You guys actually went through it. That moment in COVID where everybody's sitting burger. When I was younger, that was never existed. Somebody would give me a dinar, and I'd go and I'd pay with my dinar, and that was it, right? Now it's almost impossible to imagine going back to that environment, right?
Even their classroom attendance, the teacher doesn't call their names anymore.
Yeah.
They scan their card and they go.
Bad. I'd be in so much trouble if they did that when I was younger.
Hamid, do you have any?
Yes. So, would you like to share any exciting research or future events that BEYON is working on?
Any exciting stuff we're working on? So I think the most exciting thing I can think of that we're working on is one of our businesses called BEYON Connect. And BEYON Connect specializes in helping businesses digitize and governments digitize. And they're building a from the ground up in Bahrain. Actually, it's really interesting. An entire system of infrastructure that countries can use to digitize citizen identity and digitize how you correspond with people, signatures, everything else. And they're doing it at a national level so countries can incorporate it very easily. That business today, and I'm very proud of it, is something we built in-house in Bahrain over the last 2 years. Now is signing agreements with Egypt, is signing agreements with Singapore, is signing agreements with Bahrain for the delivery of services we deployed and developed in Bahrain ourselves from the ground up. And it just goes to show that with just a very focused effort and kind of trying to understand your product market fit, understand what the opportunities are, you can suddenly shoot so high up that you're selling a service to Egypt of all countries. The smallest country in the region, Bahrain, all the way to the largest country in the region, Egypt, using the same set of tools.
I think that's one of the like again the when the different functions in the government work on a national level, that's where the strength also like connecting all these different operations, different departments.
The services.
Yeah, the services, absolutely.
Do you have any other questions?
Many students decide to major in business. Is there a particular field you recommend students to go in, given the changes to our societies that are underway?
I mean, business is always a good field to take, and it's always important to understand business. It's always important to understand entrepreneurship, and it's something that we always look for entrepreneurial people in our context, because we look for people that can be an entrepreneur inside the business as much as being an entrepreneur outside of the business. But I also advise outside of fields like business that you look at, as I was saying, incorporating a piece of technology in anything that you're studying. I remember my niece was saying she wanted to study genetics, and my advice to her was, you should look at the synergy between genetics and technology, because there's an old world that is happening, that is going the way of the dodo, and there's this new world that's coming in that synergizes everything. So my strongest recommendation to you, first of all, is follow your passion, whatever it is. But then on top of that, if there's an opportunity to synergize technology with your passion, then that's the point where I think interesting things can happen, at least for me personally, right? So whether it's anything from sports science all the way up through, law, look for those points that keep you passionate and coming to work and coming to the things that interest you, and also look at those opportunities to build things and do it differently.
I have a question.
Hayr.
From your experience, what technological skills do students need in order to be prepared for certain majors in fields related to business and technology?
I think you need basic understandings of coding, not complex. I think you need at least basic, right? You need to understand how coding, and I think in BEYON you're doing it a lot these days, right? Which is just the basic understanding of, how languages are constructed from a coding perspective. That's generally, for a lot of people, is going to be more and more salient. I think data science is one of those spaces that is increasingly in demand. So understanding how large blocks of data or multiple sources of data can combine together in a way that you can start to understand them better. And how do you take from a big, I guess you would say, sea of data, how do you pick the right pieces of data and then kind of start to form a view of that? How many people from Bahrain under the age of 20 use my app, and why do they use my app, right? That's a set of questions that's almost extremely common to ask, and most businesses don't know how to answer that. So data science and data scientists are the people that are, it sounds very scary, data science, but it's not. as scary as genetics or anything. So it's something that you can get into if you understand it and if you're interested. I used to do it as a hobby on my free time. I think there's going to be increasing work around areas like cybersecurity, one of the most in-demand fields right now. We run a cybersecurity business, and I can tell you that the people that are a part of that business are extremely smart, extremely valuable. We trust them a lot, and they stop. It's interesting with cybersecurity because being a police officer, for instance, is you're worried about your block. In cybersecurity, I'll tell you one of the interesting things our guys did was they last year this team from Bahrain, made up of Bahrainis, uncovered an attack that was happening for 5 years. Nobody in the world knew about it. It attacked some of the largest companies, including AT&T and T-Mobile, for 5 years. It was called a zero-day attack, which means that it was an attack that was customized from the ground up and to attack these people. And it hit our systems. Our guys saw it within minutes and reported it. And recently there was a conversation in Congress in the United States where they were talking about the hack and what our guys did to find it. So cybersecurity is one of those fields that I think is extremely important for people to get into. Of course, now we're talking about artificial intelligence more, and then there will be more fields that come up. So, by the digital forensics, right? But I mean, the fact of the matter is, over the next 3 years, 5 years, my answer to your question will change. My answer to your question will probably change in 3 months. Okay, so you need to kind of understand the basics and stay on top of it. This world is changing so fast.
What if, for example, the student is like really interested in, for example, art, and say art really isn't in demand right now. If I, for example, I don't take business or computer, I major in like, say math and art, thinking I'm going to go to architecture. What are some challenges I would face as a freshman going to college, even though I'm switching majors like you did?
I didn't switch majors, I switched careers. Switching majors is also extremely difficult. Actually, I switched majors. I started in business and then I moved to politics. But you're going to always face challenges. And I think you're coming into a world, not to scare you or anything, but there's so many people trying to do the same thing. And it's very challenging you're going to realize it, I think, and I think it's becoming more and more apparent these days that as soon as you pop out of school, the level of competition to stay ahead of the game, you're suddenly now with the smartest people from China, the smartest people from the US, the smartest people from Croatia, the smartest people from Africa. And they're all in the same grade as you. And I remember someone was telling me they thought they were always the smartest person in their grade. And they went to MIT and they were extremely smart and really ahead of things. And then when they got there, it was like, wow, there's so many other smart people here and I don't feel as smart as I used to feel, right? So the first thing I'm going to say is that you're going to find a challenge in any of those fields, whether it's math, art, science, business, and anything else, when you first walk out of school and try to get into the world. And you're going to have to really try your hardest, and even then it's still going to be challenging. But then when it comes down to the fields that you're talking about, math, art, those are already being disrupted quite substantially, right? Extremely substantially. Art itself, right? I'm sure you've started to see it, but those Instagram filters that you take your photo and then it draws like 15 different versions or 100 different versions of you, right? And makes you look more attractive than you ever thought you were, but now you look really like, you don't recognize yourself. I said, who's that handsome guy? So no, but they have those Instagram filters, but that's all AI. And how did they get there? They are scraping. The way they do that is they scrape real artists' work. So they go on like websites, whether it's DeviantHub, Flickr, whatever. They find all their art, they scrape through them, they feed it to the AI, and the AI then starts copying other people's work to show you what you look like as other people might have drawn you. So in this world that we're starting to move into, it's like being an artist is changing. The concept of being an artist is changing when a computer can develop within minutes 150 different interpretations based on, you know, hundreds and thousands of different artists all around the world. So you're again staying relevant in the space of that, identifying the synergy in the space of that, and it's a huge challenge. Is going to be it's going to be difficult, and I think it's certainly being done at a pace that's never been done before. Yeah. So the answer to that also partially is you need to be uncomfortable, and you're going to have to be uncomfortable, and you're going to be uncomfortable, and you're going to have to adapt, even in fields as difficult as math that's being disrupted. Thank you.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
We are noticing that like crypto is being adopted globally and it's an increase of adoption, and Bahrain is becoming a fintech and crypto hub. How can Beyond support these technologies, and what kind of services can they offer?
What do you think of crypto?
I think that it's definitely like a more secure version.
Of what?
It's interesting how it's like made and how it's secure type of payment, and it's integrated with everything nowadays.
So crypto is one of those fields that it's so new that the only thing you can do is kind of as a government adapt to it, which is what we're doing, right? Where the government of Bahrain is kind of regulating ahead. It's trying to put enforcement and guidelines and rails and everything so they can allow people to do it as safely as possible. But what is crypto fundamentally, right? Crypto fundamentally is technology. It's bits and bytes, and people are prescribing value to that, right? They're saying I believe this bit and this byte is worth $1, and then someone else says no, I think it's worth $2, right? And that's all that's happening, right? But then
So one big world auction of
right.
coin.
So and that's on the financial side. Then there's like crypto as a utility, and on the utility side, it's very interesting, right? Because blockchain and crypto, and we use it internally, for instance, and beyond, not for the selling and buying and of all of that, which is what we're mostly regulating in the country. The part that's a little unregulated is the side of crypto that I think is, to me, very useful, ledgers, right? Which is, again, it's one of those old fields that people used to do and have done since the beginning of time. And actually, if you go back in history and you read history and you get into classical history, most of the things that survived, even though, for thousands of years, are ledgers. And what is a ledger? A ledger is me just saying, Muhammad did this, and then Sarah did that, and then at 2 p.m., Jasim did that, right? So it's kind of, a ledger is a document of saying what happened when. And blockchain fundamentally is nothing but that. But it's done in a way that nobody can break it. So effectively, once it's documented, it's very, very hard, if not impossible, for someone to come in and say, actually, I'm going to edit it so it looks different than it did before. And that's where we start to use blockchain. We used to use it for some of our internal ledgers to make sure that when things are being done, nobody's cheating, right? Nobody's stealing something. Nobody's lying about something. Nobody is breaking into something. So we use ledgers and blockchain internally in that way to facilitate our own business. We've not gotten into crypto as in financial services crypto. I sit on the board of Binance, which is the largest company in the world that does blockchain and crypto sales, right? So for that part, that's regulated. And that part that's more about Bitcoin and Ethereum and everything else where you're selling and buying and transacting. So in that world, I think it's a little bit different, and we're starting to, as Beyond, look at the synergies between us and them. It'll start with the financial services part of our business, and we're starting to look at. I can't talk about what we're doing right now, but I think it's pretty obvious that you want to help people that are in the crypto world be able to take their money into the real world. And then vice versa, you want to help people that are in the real world to take their money into the crypto world.
Thank you.
Of course.
So digital currencies are here to stay.
I don't know. We'll have to see how regulation it. I think the answer to it is it's going to be very, very hard to stop it as a movement. There's so many people globally. There's so many countries globally that are so dependent on it. But there are also a lot of people threatened by it, right? So on the one side, crypto is supposed to democratize currency, blockchain. And then on the other side, you have governments and entities that have always controlled the supply and demand of money, because currency is just supply and demand. You have something I want and I ascribe a value to it, and then depending on how much I have and how much you want, I will either give or take, right? And therefore there is a value. And then there's a scarcity, which means that there's not enough of it. So when you combine scarcity with supply and demand, therefore you have value. And in some ways, to answer your question, while it's here to stay in certain contexts, I think on the other side, there's obviously this, a lot of people afraid of it. And what regulators do is they try to make the entire space safe for everyone and try to give both the business certainty and the user certainty over how to operate in that space. But it could disappear.
It could.
Very
I think,
easily.
like the hype that happened 2 years ago, I
Yeah.
guess that was the peak of, I'm sure you all have you heard like your parents, your cousins, some of your family talking about Bitcoins and Ethereum, and now it's kind of, I think.
It's a wave. I've seen three of them, right? In 2009, I saw it again in 2012. I saw it again in 2017. I saw it again now. So the answer is there's a cycle of people of interest, like interest and then craziness and then disbelief and then upsetness and then interest and craziness and disbelief and upsetness. That will happen, and that I think we'll keep doing that. But as you're doing that, you're regulating to make it safer for people to use. So if you ask me, if I was to take a bet, it's definitely here to stay.
Have your own currency one day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question that's more general.
Yeah.
Because you said you switched like your career major 4 times.
Yeah.
What kind of advice would you give to those who aren't sure what they want to major in? What kind of skills do you think they should have?
First of all, again, I think you should follow your passion. Do things that you're interested in. Don't do things that are boring, right? You have to do things that keep you committed. And for me, what was college? College to me was less about, and again, for different people, college is different things, but I think for most people, they will say college taught me a way to think. It didn't necessarily teach me things. And you have to do well at college, but you're almost not doing well at college because it's necessarily teaching you something. And this is for a lot of people. You're doing well at college because it forces you to learn to think about things different ways. It forces you to construct arguments differently. It forces you to want to learn about things differently. It forces you to learn how to open a book and kind of read everything and then construct arguments and deconstruct arguments and then have an argument with somebody about it. And it's those skills that, at least for me, I took away from college that I found to be so much more useful. Because then no matter what context I went in, and I know a lot of people, one person that works for me is a PhD who used to work at CERN. I don't know if you know what CERN is. CERN is the Great Hadron Collider, which is actually really interesting because it sits across multiple countries. It's this huge tunnel that goes under the ground, and it's like this big circle. Okay, and it's like, who are these crazy people that built this massive circle under the ground, and it's all wires and everything? I really encourage you to go check it out. But what do they do in CERN? They take a proton and they shoot it. A proton, something you can barely see, and they shoot it super, super, super fast. And then they take another one and they shoot it super, super fast, and they keep going until they collide, poof, and then they pop. And then they're watching this, and they built all of this over the course of decades, right? Just to watch this happen, to prove something in physics was true or not true, right? Just it shows the tenacity of people, that they're crazy, these crazy people out there that are willing to do something like that. But anyways, this guy worked in this place, and by the way, the internet, to just kind of another side note, the internet, as you know it today, was created by somebody in CERN. Okay, one of the scientists in CERN. And why did he create the internet? They created the internet because they were trying to figure out how to talk to each other over long distances. It was that simple, right? So in the 70s, these guys started trying to figure out, how do I communicate with people over long distances and share data, which then turned into the internet. So one of those guys works in my team, right? And he's my head of strategy. So even though he came from a scientific background in this, and then worked in this laboratory where all they do all day long is try to figure out how to get protons to crash into each other at high speeds, so they could take one photo of something that they call the Higgs boson, which is a God particle. And that's all they do all day long. And then now he's the head of strategy of something in BEYON as a group in Batelco. So the answer to your question again is, chase your passion, learn how to think, apply it wherever, right? And I can't tell you a set of skills. It's super hard to tell you a set of skills that you need to learn, that you need to be good at. Just be good at talking to people, be observational, ready to learn about the world at any time, be scientific in your approach, meaning when you see a problem, you need to not look at it emotionally, but you need to just learn how to break down the problem into a sum of its parts, and then logically understand how to overcome it. And then apply your thinking. And then no matter where you go, whether it's in the field of science, whether it's the field of engineering, whether you as a person become valuable in that context, and you as a person can grow in that context. Now, that doesn't discount that college is important. I don't want you to get me wrong. If you're studying, you'll never be a doctor without going through college and going through a medical profession, right? You will never be a licensed engineer unless you do that, right? But to your question on being flexible about career and flexible about career choice, life will always give you that flexibility insofar as you are and have the capability to be structured, scientific, thoughtful, willing to keep learning, and willing to apply. You're not stuck. You don't get to a point where you're necessarily stuck unless you stick yourself. Yeah?
Thank you.
Of course.
Mohammed, do you have any?
Yeah. We have seen a rise in universities offering major in financial technologies, and what are the benefits of such a major like that?
Have you ever used a financial technology? I'm sure you have, right? Like you've like, do you play video games?
Yeah.
Have you ever bought something online? That uses a financial technology. So, whether it's on the App Store, whether it's on Fortnite, whether it's on whatever, you're always interacting with financial technology in some sort. And financial technology, like any technology, is changing. So, what used to be a world that was cash-based, dollars, dinars. I don't know if you guys are old enough. I'm old enough that I know I remember my mother, and I'm sure some parents still do, walk around with a wallet full of cash whenever we're on vacation. To I'm going to give this person some money. I'm going to give that person some. I don't do that, right? I've never done that, and people look at me horrified, like, how do you walk around without a wallet? And I have my phone, right? My phone can pay for things. That's all fintech. That's all financial technology. And sometimes people think of fintech as crypto and some of the really new age stuff, but fintech is happening all the time. Fintech is just about facilitating people to understand how to make it easier and more digital to use their money or understand their money, or effectively, and effectively that's changing very rapidly. So to give you an example. my parents' generation always had a relationship with the bank. And the banker would always tell you, and he would say, you know, come to my office. I remember the first time I created a bank account, he took me into his office and he made me sign papers and do this and do that. And I never went back to the bank again because I hated it. It was such a bad experience. And I on a personal basis, I'm an introvert, right? I don't like talking to people. So to be stuck in a room with a banker just is very terrifying to me, and I don't like it. So when suddenly somebody said, oh, by the way, you can do this all online and you don't even need to talk to a banker, I'm like, ah, great. I'm the first person to use fintech, right? And online banking. And then I realized very quickly that we were in a world where your bank used to own your relationship. This guy that would call you into his office and say, oh, by the way, you have, you know, $100 in your bank account. Maybe I put 20% here and I put 30% there and whatever. And you don't really know what's happening, right? And now we're in this world where that relationship is broken. It doesn't exist the way it used to anymore. Right now, you are in a position to use your money however you want to, right? And you can say, I want to invest in stocks. I want to spend it in the metaverse. I want to kind of go on the App Store and do this, or I want to put it into a savings account here. The reason you have that flexibility and that openness and the ability is a combination of two things. One is fintech companies which are providing those services, right? The brokerage firm, the app store, the this, the that, right? Those services. And the other is the people that are building the infrastructure that sits between all those services that makes it so seamless and easy for you to use that you don't even think about it. You don't think of it as a problem. You don't think of servers in Bahrain in a data center that needed to be PCI DSS compliant, and you don't even know what that word is, right? But there's all of that that goes into thinking about how do I make it so seamless that the person doesn't even see what's there. So there's the application and there's the service layer. I think fintech is so wide and broad a term because it captures all of that, the application and the service layer.
Would you like advise them to study finance and then move into the technology, or would you advise the students, like if they want to do business, let them do business management, like business information first, or if they want to do finance, let them do fintech rather than finance? What's your take?
I think you need to know. I think you need to know fundamentals. I think fundamentals are important, and I think technology is important. And I think the weakest people in the field tend to be strong in technology and bad in fundamentals. And I think the weakest people in the future are going to be strong in fundamentals and bad in
Is
technology.
it because they chose one route over another? Like they chose to go to the more of the fundamental route, and then the technology was more of like more of a major for their future, or
No, again, I think the fundamentals are critical. It's not that people made mistakes and went one route or another. The point I'm making here is even that is changing,
right?
right? In this
Right.
world, right? Now, it used to be that we were in a world where fundamentals were the most important. Now we're getting into a world where fundamentals and technology are important. So the you know, for you guys, again, I can't advise the worst thing the biggest disservice I can do to all of you is to tell you to do one over the other. The the world that you're walking into is so fluid, so with so much change and disruption that you can't do one or the other. You have to know both. You have to know a bit about both, right? But also it's still not new enough that you have to let go of your fundamentals. So that's the point. The point I'm making is don't make the mistake of dropping the fundamental understanding of finance because technology is so appealing. You need to have both in this world. Yeah, the technology is important, but the fundamentals are still important. There'll be one day where the fundamentals are less important, right? But just like the calculator made it so that outside of school you don't really need to know deep arithmetic and algebra and everything else, right? But And that's what's going to happen to most of these fields that we're in at some point. We're not at that point yet, but over the next 5-10 years, I suspect the fundamentals will get weakened.
If we had to go back in time to the time you were in high school, what would you have done differently or wished that you've done differently?
I'd have invested in
In high
Apple.
school.
I'd have invested in Apple. I'd have done nothing but invest. I would have sold everything and invested in Apple. That would be the only thing I'd do differently.
Do you encourage them to invest at a young
I think. I think. I think.
Like, what age do you think it's like?
I think.
The ninth graders, the 10th and the 11th. Like, at what age they should start considering the investment route?
How maybe I'll ask all of you guys a question then. How much do each of you, and I want each of you to answer this, how much do you know about managing your money, managing your expenses, saving money, and investing? Go ahead.
I do sometimes when I receive. I'm going to give you an example, like when Eid, like the idea when I have received idea. What I do is from the savings I get is what I've learned from my parents is that I take some, spend it on games. What I've learned and leave some or like in my drawer or like give them my father.
Amazing.
So that I can like save them for the future.
Very
In
good.
order when I grow up or something, it can be useful and beneficial for me, so that I don't have to struggle.
Excellent. The rest of you guys can answer very honestly. Go ahead.
I think I do something similar. Like I have my monthly allowance.
Yeah.
Usually I'd say, okay, I'd spend what, 20-30%. Like I don't spend much. And then the rest I'd either save it in my account, that's my daily account that I use, or I'd give it to my dad and he would put it in my.
What's your daily account?
In BBK.
Okay, like so you go and you put it in BBK.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I used to be very bad at managing my money. I used to spend whatever money I was given. Now I've kind of shifted to I only spend it when it's something essential. So
Yeah.
if I want to buy something that's like essentially out that I want it for a while, maybe I'll spend it on that. If I want to buy food, I'll spend it on that. But
Mhm.
it's spending my money.
Where does the rest of your money go?
I just put it in my wallet. And save
In your
it
wallet.
on my bank account.
Okay.
Personally, I think like when I get my allowance, I usually keep some like 10-20% to spend, some to keep it at home, and also the rest keep it at the bank. So just in case, like if I ever wanted throughout the month, ever wanted to buy something, or if I needed the money, like an emergency, I would always be prepared.
Okay. So I'll tell you about me. I knew nothing about money management until I was in my 20s, and I think I was in college, and I was like, why am I every month eating ramen at some point? Day 20 of the month of May, I have like I stopped eating regular food, and I'm now eating ramen, and maybe if I'm lucky some chicken as well. Okay, that was my college every single time, and I was really confused as to why I was getting to that point. And I then went through this process of teaching myself money management and just how to get better at managing money and how to kind of just improve inflows and outflows. And I think it's fundamental for all of you to take the time to understand that. And while you're doing good things, right? You're saving. You're not spending everything. You're saving 10. You're only spending 10 or 20%, etc. While that's good, and that's exactly the right thing you should be doing. One thing I started to realize, and especially I think the more financially independent you get, the more you realize this, is a combination of two things. One is money is simple in the sense that you always have your inflows and you have your outflows. You have money coming in and money going out. At any given time, right now your lives are very simple, right? Right now it's only money coming in, mostly. The older you get, you suddenly realize money is automatically going out that you never thought that without even knowing. It's just suddenly, why did I suddenly get 50% poorer and I didn't realize that I was, So that's one challenge that's going to happen. And you just have to get good at seeing what is causing money to go out and what is causing money to come in and balancing that as the most important thing. But then when it comes to savings, one thing that I learned that I learned too late in my life, and I wish I learned earlier, was every dinar that doesn't have a job is a dinar that's not doing anything, and that's a useless dinar. Your dinar has to have a job. And what do I mean by that? It has to either be put towards saving for something or put towards making something. And if it's just sitting around in the bank account doing nothing, then that's a wasted dinar as far as I'm concerned. So what what you guys all need to think about the more you get older, maybe not now, right? But certainly not in ninth grade. You don't want to be thinking about it in ninth grade. But the closer you get to college and graduate, you need to start thinking about, how do I balance that? How do I put my money to work for me? How do I make sure my inflows are higher than my outflows? That is important to you on a personal basis, but it's also important to you when you start managing your profit and losses at work. It starts getting important when you start managing your companies or building your companies, right? Because that basic principle will apply for your life wherever you are, personally or in work.
Sheikh Mohammed, thank you very much. This is all the time we have. That was a very exciting conversation. And maybe later in the future we can pick up about teach them how to invest, where to look, even if they have some interest of about investing in the future. We would love to welcome you again sometime in the future on behalf of myself, our chairperson, Sheikh Hamai, our board of trustees, and the entire BEYON community. We thank you again. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me, guys.